James Diboe last week, and James is from Toxteth, and he travels the world in search of Indigenous tribes so he can then return to the UK to pass on what he has learned. How interesting is that? Well, here's what he had to say to our call.
Now, some of you may know our next guest, no stranger to BBC Radio Merseyside. I am joined on the line by James Diboe. James travels the world exploring cultures and societies of the tribes of South America, Africa, the Philippines, Tonga, Indonesia. The list is endless. To date, James has visited more than 39 countries and he just keeps on going. The Liverpool Echo caught up with James recently. James joins me now to tell me all about that, as well as his travels and what he has planned for the future.
How are you doing, Carl? Great to be back on.
It's great to have you back on, James, this guy from Liverpool, travelling the world and not just visiting, but you tend to go and stay with the Indigenous tribes around the world. What got you into doing that?
Well, from a long time, when I was very young, I was always interested in cultures around the world anyway, from when I had maps and globes as a child, when I started getting older, and then from when, watching also documentaries on Aboriginal Australians, the Maasai tribes in Africa, people in South America, the Pacific Islanders. So I was always curious from the beginning. Then I realised later on that these all came from Africa many, many years ago. So that got me more interested, and I thought, I'm going to go and visit these peoples, especially some of these secluded peoples around the world that a lot of people, even in their own country, are not aware of them. A lot of these local people are not aware of who the Indigenous peoples are.
Now, did you initially do this so that you could actually pass knowledge on to people who were in sort of, for want of a better phrase, the progressive world?
I was always speaking to some people in the local communities, and I did a slideshow not long ago, about 3 years ago, at the Winter Gardens. And it was just something for the youth to show them, places around the world and different peoples and that. So then eventually, obviously, I come on your radio show February last year.
I think it was the Upfront show, wasn't it? Yeah, I was
Upfront show,
that, yeah,
that's what it was.
Now, I remember that first time you spoke about a facility that you were setting up called Culturlution. What is Culturlution for those that don't know?
The name Culturlution, well, it was originally from the name Devolution. That was like a little spiritual kind of name I always used to kind of go with, and Culturlution came out of that, meaning the roots of cultures. So when I travel to some of these places, I have to go into the most secluded areas to find some of the most ancient type of peoples that first left Africa and migrated to some of these different parts of the world.
Now, talking about migration, James, are you interested in the migration of some of the individuals of these tribes to either different parts of the world or different communities surrounding them?
You could go back to a couple of thousand years, if you like, when there was an Austronesian expansion that came out of Taiwan and China through Southeast Asia, then going into the Pacific, also in Madagascar, they speak an Austronesian. So that was interesting. Then also, from modern day, these get absorbed into, some of them get absorbed into the modern society, and that is completely different for them. But it's like the Orange Asley tribe, they're 60% stay hidden and 40% mix with the local people. Times are changing.
Is that because of the onslaught of modern technology?
Yeah, exactly. They are definitely the right words. There's no attention on Indigenous peoples, so they're never on the news, or they never see pictures of them everywhere.
Now, there's got to be definite differences, James, between the cultures and societies of some of these tribes that you've visited, from, say, Tonga to Cambodia. However, what are some of the differences and what are some of the similarities?
Well, they're similar. They're all in touch with nature. They all have similar beliefs, similar stories. A lot of their knowledge is passed down orally. An example, the people in the Fiji Islands saying they came from Lake Tanganyika in East Africa when they reached Fiji about 1500 BC. Academia wouldn't cover that, you see. And like the Maasai tribes, they believe their god's called Engai, and he has duality. The whole culture, I try and learn as much as I can when I'm there.
Now, when you talk about, James, spirituality, and when you talk about nature and these tribes being more in tune with that, do you think that we could learn something in today's modern world from some of these tribes?
Most definitely. If there was any way that people could do some sort of either cultural exchange, to actually take people from this country or other countries to visit these peoples, it'd be very interesting, because sometimes to see them face to face and watch and observe and how they live. And also, you can set up workshops on Indigenous peoples around the world, so I think it'd be definitely interesting for the youth or anyone to learn about these peoples. The Mani tribe in Thailand, there's only 300 of them left. This is how extinction kind of happens.
What have been the people and places that have impacted you the most?
When I first went to Africa, going to the Gambia, going to Kenya, Madagascar, Zanzibar, and really seeing the true Africa, like from what we hear from the Western part of the world about it's very negative, everybody's poor, all the stereotypes. So I had to go there myself, and I thought it was the most beautiful place. And then also going to the Pacific Islands of Fiji, Tonga, Hawaii, and also Micronesia I went into. And these are very, very spiritual people. Even the Australian Aborigines, when I went over to there, there's a lot of history. It's amazing history. We can learn a lot from them.
Just a little bit closer to home, you've recently had a feature in the Liverpool Echo. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, it was through Patrick Graham. He works for the Liverpool Echo, and he covers stories from Liverpool every day or every week. So he asked me, could he put my story in? I got a good response from it anyway.
Oh, it must be amazing and surreal to have visited some of these places and people and then come back, James, to a society like this. How does it feel returning back to Liverpool, specifically the UK as well, after such an inspirational time?
The weather is definitely something you feel, and I try and look at it from a positive perspective. I look think about they're great memories that they can't be erased. They're there, So them memories keep me going when I do come back, and I'm thinking of my next trip in the future.
So James, just give us a reminder of the countries that you've visited.
Venezuela, Mexico, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Barbados, Australia, Tonga, Fiji, Hawaii, Guam, which is in Micronesia, also Gambia, Kenya, Zanzibar, Madagascar, Morocco, Mauritius, Portugal, France.
I think we're quite lucky to have actually caught you while you're on home turf. What have you got coming up travel-wise for the future, just finally?
I'd love to go to Papua New Guinea. That's definitely a place. Also, I'd like to go to visit where my father's side is from, Nigeria. Definitely have to go there. Ghana, Rwanda. Plus, eventually, I will take a fair trip back to Fiji because I've actually been there twice. Going and actually visiting them is very different than studying about them. Listen to their oral stories at the same time.
James, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you for BBC Radio Merseyside's evening show. Keep us appraised as to what you're going to be doing in the future, and let us know before you get off on your travels, whilst you're on your travels, and after you've been on your travels, all that information and how you found it.
Thank you very much for having me on, Carl, anyway.
Thanks a lot, James. Take care.
What a well-travelled man that James Diboe is. That was his chat with our Carl Learmond about his travels to rare tribes. Very interesting conversation. And we can't get enough for Carl Learmond tonight because he's back soon with his soul pick. It's not your show tonight, Carl.
You know what, Tess?